Okay. So I'm going to introduce Andy Miner, who's going to give us our invocation before we start. Andy?
Please pray with me. Dear Lord Jesus, I just want to come to you and thank you for all the members of this club, and thank you for all we do in this community. Let us always know that you're in control of what we do, and to keep our focus on the children of Manatee County and all we can do for them. In your first name I pray, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Andy. Neil Neil organized our event that we had on Saturday morning in the rain, but it went very well. I think we had 30 to 35 Kiwanians out to help support Meals on Wheels as they distributed food to what was planned to be 1,000 families. I don't think we hit 1,000. Rain probably kept them away, but as I said, we had probably 30 to 35 people there. We supported that effort financially as well. So all in all, I think it was a good event. Christy, I think you were working with Neil as far as helping set up volunteers. Anything you'd like to add?
No, I think everybody who came, thank you for all of your help. I know that Meals on Wheels was very appreciative, especially those of us that became traffic and got sopping wet. But and all in all, I think it was a good event. I talked to a lot of families as they were going through, and they were all very, very grateful, and you could tell they needed it too.
Thank you. And our next event that we are supporting both financially and hopefully with volunteers will be the Hope for Communities. They are still gearing up. That'll happen over a 3 or 4 week period at various church locations. And they, as I said last week, they've identified like about 250 kids that would have participated in our Christmas in August. They will work with the churches and have them assigned to go to 3 or 4 different churches, so that their school needs will be taken care of. And then, as we've discussed several times, needs that them and their families may have throughout the year. Nice partnerships that are formed there. That's it for me. Does anybody have any other announcements they'd like to add? All right. Well, hearing none, I think Gilbert's got a couple duties this morning. Not only will he give us a page of history, but he will introduce our honored guest.
I'm reading from 1924, and I'll begin it. On September 30th, 1924, at the regular luncheon meeting in the Arcade Hotel in Bradentown, members of the club were entertained by musicians arranged by W.U. Lathrop, Harry Land, and Dr. McDuffie. 2 committees gave reports to the members. The Committee on Campsites reported on the progress of having campsites built outside the Tri-Cities of Bradentown, Palmetto, and Manatee. The Committee on a Tourist Hotel reported on the progress made to build a hotel. President Hollingsworth appointed a committee composed of W.B. Kirby, H.K. Talent, William A. Manning, and Whitney Curry to work with the Optimist Club to establish a Manatee County Athletic Association. On September 16, 1924, at the Arcade Hotel in Bradentown, the club held its annual meeting to elect new officers and directors at the next year. President Hollingsworth welcomed everybody to the meeting and proceeded right to the agenda. After a great dinner and speeches with the candidates, Harry Peterson was elected to be the 1925 president, along with William A. Manning as vice president, H.D. Horney as secretary treasurer, and Harry L. Land as district trustee. Dewey Dye, John Campbell, O.D. Groff, B.W. Williams, W.E. Mann, all from Bradentown, J.P. Harley from Palmetto, and H.B. Perry from Manatee were elected as directors. On December 23, 1924, the club held its regular luncheon meeting at the Arcade Hotel and welcomed speakers, Reverend Green, who gave a rousing speech which drew cheers from the audience. The new manager of the Manatee Mana Vista Hotel, J.G. Hancock, then gave an informative speech about the modern accommodations offered at the hotel. Harry Peterson was sworn in as president and continued to serve. He had been serving as the Palmetto Chamber of Commerce director. During this time, Manatee County welcomed many visitors each day. Some of these people were tourists and sportsmen looking for adventure. Some were families looking for a new home, and others were investors. There were several hotels in the area. However, more motels, hotels, or boarding houses were needed. As the 1924 came to an end, individuals who were members of the club representing many different organizations met to establish an entity to address the issue. One committee was formed to establish a first-class hotel in downtown Bradentown, and it elected the following men as leaders of the committee: Henry K. Talent as chairman, and then Mr. Horney, John Singletary, John Campbell, Underhill, Cummings, Ruth Everett P. Green, George B. Wallace, Henry Lehman, and Emery Sharp, Whitney Curry, W.D. Kimball, Elon B. Rood, and Robert W. Bentley. By the end of 1924, the club had inducted new members, and it was a successful year. We're honored here today and really excited to have Judge Bonner, who's appearing with us today by Zoom. And let me give a brief introduction about her, but I do want to tell you that I hope that she will come back in person with us next year when we're all together, and will help me with a program which I hope to have on the history of the judges here. She's helping me finish the book on the history of the judges of the 12th Judicial Circuit and of the 12th Judicial Circuit itself, the history of that. So hope to have her come back and do that, and then that time we'll hear a little bit more about Judge Doyle and Judge Nicholas and Judge Hensley. So let me tell you a little bit about Judge Bonner. Judge Kimberly Carlton Bonner is the first Chief Judge of the 12th Judicial Circuit. She made history when she was elected last year. She was appointed by Governor Bush in 2002, and then to the county bench in Sarasota, and then she's was appointed by Governor Rick Scott in 2013 to a circuit position. Things that we Kiwanians want to know is she's very involved in 4-H throughout her life. As a child, she grew up on a ranch in Sarasota and very involved in 4-H and raised a lot of animals. She's very involved in agriculture, and which this club, of course, has a special attachment to. I know she's going to talk to us about some serious matters, but I'd like her to introduce you to her goats. I know she doesn't have them with her, but at least she can tell you their names, which I really find special, because I have an interest in the people that she named the goats after. She's an author. She's a mother. As I said, she's a rancher, and she really has been involved in the community in Sarasota extensively, not only as a youth in 4-H, but also as a parent. So after that introduction, I'll just let Judge Bonner take over.
Okay, well, thank you. How can I resist that? I will start off with the most important thing, which is these are my goats, Wyatt and Gilbert. And for those of you who are not kind of history nerds or aren't into the Old West, of course, Wyatt Earp was one of our famous frontier marshals and lawmen, and so I have a very strong affection for the Old West and history, and so all of my pets have some kind of themed name like that. So I'm currently in the market for a donkey because I want to name him Johnny Ringo. So I do have really more creatures roaming about my yard and my house than any one person should, but I think it's perfectly normal. So I'll be happy to answer any questions as we go along. I wanted to, I think, primarily give you all an update or an overview of what's been happening with the court system and how you might be affected either as a business owner, as a witness, a litigant, somebody who's just interested in what's going on with the courts. Because as we watch our state open up and we watch our march into phase 2, I want to really distinguish between the courts reopening and what you're seeing statewide, because it's going to look very different and on a very different schedule. Back in March, when COVID-19 first really started getting attention in Florida, primarily because of the hot spots down in Miami, Brevard County, Palm Beach, our Supreme Court Chief Justice Charles Kennedy issued some orders that essentially closed the courthouse doors, but for a very limited number of cases that have to constitutionally be heard and can only be heard face to face. And those would include doing a criminal first appearance, a bail hearing, for example, sheltering a juvenile who's at risk, handling a domestic violence injunction proceedings. So a very handful of cases were what were deemed mission essential. Everything else was ordered to be handled and the term that we've been using is remote technology. That took some time to get off the ground. We were kind of grinding to a halt for the first week or two, and then our trial court budget commission really stepped up and got us the technology that we needed by getting us additional Zoom licenses, as well as webcams, extra laptops, because many, if not most of our personnel have been working remotely from home. So I have done Zoom divorce trials. I have been doing most of my docket in my chambers via Zoom. Only the domestic violence cases have been coming in person. And this is in all 3 of our counties, Sarasota, DeSoto, and Manatee. And we've done, frankly, better than anyone would have expected, getting a lot done. We're not 100% capacity. There have been no jury trials since March. Jury trials have been suspended. And most recently, as of yesterday, the Chief Justice extended the jury trial suspension through July 17th. For obvious reasons, we don't want to haul people involuntarily into a crowded facility, have them sitting elbow to elbow on jury duty, and then cause another outbreak or expose somebody to a virus. As you can imagine, these buildings are very difficult on a good day to keep clean. We often complain about it. And so with the hygiene protocols and so forth, it's just imperative that we kept and continue to keep the foot traffic to a minimum while we do what we can remotely. Unfortunately, we have done, I think, a good job handling what we can using Zoom, WebEx, and other features. Some things have just been postponed, and those unfortunately are causing the backlog, and those are very large criminal dockets where people usually come in large groups of 50 to 100 people to be arraigned or to have a docket sounding prior to trial. We've had no criminal trials, no civil trials since the middle of March. So you can imagine we're concerned about what things look like when we do get jurors back in. Having said that, our phases of reopening have the same numbers as the state. So we have phase 1, 2, 3, 4. Phase 4, there's a vaccine or no longer a threat of COVID, and everything is back to the way it was on March 15th. Our phase 2, though, has very different requirements to get there than what you're seeing now. So when people ask, why can I get a tattoo and go to the movies and go out to eat in a restaurant, but I can't come into court, or the clerk's office still has limited foot traffic? The reason is that our phase ups are tied to benchmarks being met, and those benchmarks have been set for phase 2. There are 5 of them. There is currently one of them that is in candor under review now to see what, if any, changes might be made to it to make it more practical, but also ensure the safety. Some of those benchmarks are completely outside of the court's control because they do require rescission of local or state restrictive movement or stay-at-home orders. They require improving COVID-19 health conditions over a 14-day period in the community. And that's primarily the one that will be holding us up, because what a improved condition over 14 days looks like can vary depending on how you quantify it. Is it number of new cases? Is it number of fatalities? Is it number of positive tests, percentage-wise? So that is the benchmark that is holding most of us back from going to phase 2, and which may be amended based on what the Supreme Court just sent out yesterday to us. And in a memorandum, the Chief Justice was very candid that reevaluating these benchmarks is an ongoing process, but nonetheless, the other benchmarks include adequate testing, including emerging antibody testing, and consulting with other building occupants. In many of our facilities, we have other people other than court staff. We have public defenders or clerks or supervisors of elections or people, other agencies such as that. So we are still in phase 1 as we're here today. We'd like to get to phase 2. Phase 2 does have certain requirements that we must meet that are going to include being able to properly screen people coming into our facilities so that they are verifying to us that they do not have any of the listed COVID symptoms. And we are at this point under a requirement to have temperature screening, and that's been a tremendous challenge resource-wise for us. I have spent a lot of time, as has my trial court administrator, speaking with county officials, Department of Health officials, our partners in law enforcement. All of these things cost money, and all of them take time and require personnel. And it has really, I think, brought to light for all of us throughout the state, all of the 20 chief judges in all 67 counties, that although you think of the court system as being one branch that takes care of itself, it's really not. Our salaries, for example, may be funded by the state, but our courthouses are all owned, maintained, and kept by the counties. All of them have different budgets and all of them have different resources. Some of our personnel are county employees, some are state employees. We have independent constitutional officers, clerk of courts, and sheriff's office that have their own obligations and their own resources that they have to also try to protect. So we've had tremendous challenges figuring out. It's an easy thing to say, for example, you can't come into the building if you have a fever over 100.4, which is a threshold now. And 3 counties, with some counties have multiple court venues. What does that look like? Who does it? Who pays for it? How are you going to get it? So these are the conversations we're having, and our county administrators, county commissioners, and Department of Health personnel and our sheriffs have been involved in that. So as you can imagine, this is just not as easy as flipping a switch on a particular day and saying we're all in phase 2. It's very likely that our individual counties will meet their phases at different times. And we'd like to keep it as uniform as possible for consistency within the circuit. But for example, there was a spike in DeSoto County last week. That does affect that 14-day trend. And there was a spike in Manatee County as well. Again, depending on how you analyze that benchmark, does that keep you from phasing up if you have your screening in place, or can you, with the collaboration of the Department of Health and other local officials, look at the overall numbers and say, it is still safe to open up this building? Because once we open up the building, we are forcing people to come to court. People aren't coming there voluntarily because they want to go shopping or go to the movies or get something to eat. For the most part, we are compelling them to come into this building. And so our responsibility to them is certainly heightened, because we have to be able to guarantee them that we are doing everything appropriate to screen who comes in, to make sure that the hygiene protocols are met, that we are not in any way being careless or not observing social distancing or other measures that would help them not be exposed to the virus and then go out and expose somebody else. So we are requiring masks and face coverings to be worn in the courthouse, social distancing, which affects the number of people that can be in a particular courtroom. And it does mean that for the foreseeable future, many of our court proceedings, such as civil cases and family cases, probate and guardianship, will continue to be done remotely. The priority of cases coming back in the building, so to speak, who gets dibs when we open back up, it's always going to start with due process and constitutionally protected rights. So that's always going to mean criminal, juvenile dependency will come first, as well as domestic violence. Unfortunately, it means for those of us who are in a civil or family division, we are the last in line to come back in person. I will say the silver lining is that we have found that we can really pull together, that our county partners, both in local governments, departments of health, clerks, sheriff, we have found that we really do pull together for the greater good. Look past what's my job description, what's your job description, that's not in my budget. And we have found ways to help each other and get things going. And I think that we have also found that things we thought we couldn't do using technology like this, we actually can do, and do it well, maybe not perfectly, but well. And so we have been able to keep cases going, to get people's cases and matters decided promptly. So as our website will tell you, our doors are open, perhaps virtually, but they are open. We are open for business. And I do think that in the long term, we will see some of this technology stay with us as we go into the future, because many people have found that there are some aspects to it that are actually more efficient than getting in your car, driving 30 minutes, finding a parking space, paying for parking, going into a courthouse, waiting in line through security to have a 15-minute hearing, to get in your car and drive back to your office. So many people are finding that in the correct venue and used correctly, this technology can be very beneficial to the court going forward. One initiative that you might find interesting is that the Chief Justice has authorized a pilot project for civil remote jury trials, which is very out of the box, but going to be very interesting to see how that develops. There are 5 circuits that are participating in that, and we should have some results of that by the end of the summer. His original date was, I think, the end of July, but we were able to persuade him that that was a little too optimistic. So I think we're looking at August, September. One of the circuits that's participating in that is the 20th Circuit, which is just south of us. It's Lee County, Collier, Charlotte, Glades, and Hendry. And Miami is one of the other circuits. Orlando, there's one up in North Florida, and then I think the 4th Circuit over in Jacksonville. So those will be very interesting to see. When we get jurors back in, the criminal cases will gobble that up with the backlog. So it will be interesting to see if there is any appetite at all to do civil proceedings that require a jury remotely. It could be a colossal flop all around, or we could find that it works better than we thought. But being down now for all of these months and at least having jury trials suspended through July, I think you can kind of do the math and see that when we get back up and running, it's the backlog of criminal cases that will take the bulk of our jury pool. And that's even accounting for the people that we're anticipating will have a larger number than usual of jurors who do not want to come because of hardship, financial concerns, or health concerns. So we're anticipating that. As part of the reopening plan, the Chief Justice put together a work group, a statewide work group, to make recommendations. And I'm not sure why, but I was named on that. So it's kind of nice to be on the front lines of all of these issues. And it's also nice because it does give you certainly that perspective that we are not alone. Every county, every circuit is having the same problems, the same conversation, the same concerns, and the same criticisms, being leveled at us as well. So we have been working pretty much nonstop within our groups and subgroups. And the Chief Justice has been in turn generating that into various orders and benchmarks. So this is where we are here today, still in phase 1, but closer, even closer today than we were yesterday. I just got a message before we started from one of our counties that we have another resource that's going to help us with the screening. When we get the screening and the PPEs in place, we think we have the other protocols fairly well in line. We just need to have our local numbers at a place where we can say truthfully that we are ready to open without any public health issues. So whether that might be next week or 2 weeks from now is difficult to say, but I will say even today it looks better than it did Friday when I was having very pointed conversations with various people in various counties about what we needed to do. We want to get the courts open. So I am happy to answer any questions. I've got some messages from fellow animal lovers too. So the goats on the roof in Georgia, I really want to see as well. I've seen pictures of them, but I'm happy to answer any questions related to pets or the Old West or the courts if you must. I see Mr. Siegfried.
Hi, Judge. I have a question. Has any consideration been given once jury trials are allowed to resume with regard to social distancing of people that appear for jury service?
Yes, some of the things that we've put in proposed best practices as well as other procedures that I would anticipate would be in place would be summoning smaller groups of people. We have gone through, just so you know, and charted out every single room in every single court facility in every single county. So we know with a 6-foot social distancing exactly how many people can fit in a particular area. So if you had a jury room that had could fit 200 people elbow to elbow, you're probably looking at maybe 50 people. So we're talking about summoning fewer people, as well as perhaps on more days. We normally bring them in only 1 or 2 days per week. So we may be looking at Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday with smaller groups. When you get to the deliberation process, it does get tricky. We think we have plans in place so that we're not stuffing 6 people into a room elbow to elbow to deliberate, but we have to keep in mind that jury deliberations do have to be private. So if we have to accommodate them in a bigger space, we may be taping up some windows or having a bailiff nearby because some of our jury rooms are quite small. But we are very concerned and aware that when we bring in jurors that we cannot have as many of them as we did back in March, and that when they get to the deliberation phase, we are going to have to find spaces for them where they can observe that 6-foot distance.
Thank you.
Judge,
Yes.
before the meeting started, I've known Judge Smith for many, many years and been part of the criminal justice system for many, many years. So kudos to extending onward with remote hearings and so forth, because I think that's been a needed thing with overcrowded, overworked caseloads. And as you alluded, people spend hours to go in for a 5 or 10-minute hearing. So kudos to that. But along that same lines, and I know back when Judge Smith had darker hair, it was discussed too, of even like night courts. So has any of that been extended to include some night courts by way of Zoom to accommodate the working folks and so forth?
Only in a very general way has the concept of night court or Saturday or weekend court been discussed. What I imagine will happen is that the Chief Justice tends to operate on a big picture scale where he will give certain parameters and then allow the local chief judge's discretion in how to implement things within those restrictions or within those, within those requirements. So locally here, we have not drilled down very deeply into that idea because it does create a staffing issue for clerks, bailiffs, all the people that have to keep the court open. We are doing civil traffic infractions using Zoom. Which surprised me, but they were able to do them. And actually even the self-represented people are able to participate. So I think it's more likely than not that you will see more technology rather than expanded hours. A lot of that depends on how long this shutdown goes on, because and how our timeline looks getting everything, back to a relatively normal caseload. So the night court, the weekend court is something that's in the toolbox, but I'm kind of shoving it in the corner for now because it does raise a lot of issues, keeping those buildings open and having other agencies have to pay people overtime to be there. So, as we say in the citrus business, sometimes the juice isn't worth the squeeze with that. So it's something that's on the table, but it's not really in the hopper currently.
Okay, thank you. And I really do think the remote will greatly enhance everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? I didn't see anyone, so.
Thank you so much, Judge Bonner, for spending some time with us today. That was good information, very informative, and we really appreciate your time. We know how busy you are. And thank you, Judge Smith, for arranging our speaker. And as you know, we have a golden rule, and we will have to get you that, I guess, when we're in phase 4. But, you can use the golden rule to measure your future success.
Well, here's hoping. So
Yes.
if you all have business that you need to attend to that you probably don't need me around for. So I will thank you for the invitation. I'm always happy to answer questions. If you do check our circuit website, by the way, jud12.flcourts.org. We try to keep that updated, at least every few days with what stage we're in. Sometimes these things can change by the hour. I mean, I'm as soon as I look at my phone, I'm going to have missed 20 emails, and one of them might be something that I could have told you. So we do try to keep it updated, but not, inundated with the minutia. But we do try to keep everybody informed about where the courts are going. And if you have any questions, then please do reach out. As long as you're not going to ask me about a specific case, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you for everything you do for the community.
Absolutely. Thank you all very much. I appreciate your time.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right.
Hi, thank you so much.
So I'd like to ask Christy to give us a couple of announcements. She had sent them to the chat box while we were in our meeting. So yeah, if you have announcements and you'd like to do that, just please go ahead and send them to one of us. Go ahead, Christy.
Okay, real quick, don't anybody leave because we still have to vote. Just making sure y'all know that. So the first announcement that I have for everybody is some of you may have gotten this email, some of you may not have. The school district has an open survey right now until Sunday about their opening plans. I would encourage everyone to go and look at their plan A, B, and C and fill out that survey. I'll send it out in e-blast to everyone, but as everyone on this call are good, upstanding community citizens, I would like to make sure you guys are aware that there's a survey out there for everyone to fill out. And then I also want to bring to everyone's attention that we have some really good speakers coming up, and that we as exec and the board, we're going to be talking about how to invite guests, because I think some of these upcoming speakers and the ones I know of that are coming after that, we may want to start inviting guests. Next week on the 16th, we have Mary Ruiz, who is going to be speaking on the new college merger. Does Florida need an independent honors college? That one should be a really good topic. And I know I hear a lot of chatter about that. And then the following week on June 23rd, Brett Pollock was able to have the Ag Commissioner, Nikki Freed. She's going to come and speak to our club. That's when I feel we should have guests to invite. So be thinking of your questions for her. We're going to give her 30 minutes to speak, so she has a little bit more time. I've been trying to get an Ag Commissioner for a few years, so this is going to be, I'm happy about this one. And then on June 30th, Gilbert has invited Mary Atkins, a UF law professor and author, to come and speak to us. And we are going to invite her to come back in person later on in the year. But that's probably another one to invite guests to. So be watching your emails to hear about how to make that all happen. And that's it for me.
Thanks. Anybody have any questions for Christy?
Mike, could I say something?
Absolutely.
And aligned with that, Christy and I are working on other programs, and one of the ones that's going to be of interest to a lot of you will be, we're going to have the candidates for the only Manatee County judge position that's up for election, and we're going to let those candidates appear by Zoom. And that will be probably later on in July. That is going to be decided maybe in August. However, someone would have to receive the majority of the votes or it will be a runoff. But there are 4 candidates for Manatee County Judge, and we're going to have them as a program in July.
That'll be a good one. Thanks. I see Neil is back. Before we end the meeting, Neil, would you like to have a few minutes or seconds, whatever, to talk about the event on Saturday?
Seconds only. A big thank you to everybody who signed up and volunteered for this Saturday event. Meals on Wheels provided about, they said, upwards of 800 boxes of food, bread, chips, milk to the community. I appreciate everybody and their willingness to volunteer in the rain, pouring rain, and more pouring rain. If it ever stopped, there would be more rain coming. So we appreciate everybody. It was amazing to watch everybody. What do we need to do? Boom, let's bag chips. So 15 to 20 people just roar right to a table and just all space out. And we bagged 2 pallets worth of chips in different bags. So that was great. And then we all broke up into traffic or distribution from there. We helped out the community in a great way, financially, as well as our volunteerism. So I want to thank everybody again who volunteered. If we have the opportunity again, I hope you found it rewarding enough as I did that we step up and help out in the future. It was a wonderful event. So again, thank you to everybody who helped me out.
Yeah, thank you. It was a great day.
Yeah, thank you, Neil, for organizing all the volunteers and leading the effort there at the Ellington Mall.
Good job, Neil.
So with anybody have any other thoughts or comments they'd like to add before we're done? Hearing none, because you're all on mute. Max got the bell. So have a great afternoon.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.